What's going on, guys? Unqualified Critics here. Welcome back to the channel. Do hit that like button if you enjoy the video. It helps out a ton, and make sure you're subscribed. Just saw the interview with, I guess, John D and Cyrus, basically the Arcade1up team, on the 1UP Weekly. I'll tell you, the video was light on news. There was a lot of hinting, or I guess not even a lot, really a little bit of hinting and innuendo. It was mostly conversational and kind of hanging out. So I'm going to put a link below. If you just want to watch the whole video, make sure you click through and check those guys out. But I always give you guys the recap and try to condense everything down so you can just get the Cliff's notes. So here's kind of everything that at least that I saw in this video. First off, this was to celebrate, I guess, the Super Bowl or Super Bowl show. So, of course, everybody was hoping for an NFL Blitz announcement, and that's not what happened. There was a cabinet in the background at all times, a red and black cabinet, and it was clearly a two-player cabinet that was covered up with a football and an NFL jersey. So I thought that was a little weird because, you know, NFL Blitz was a four-player game. What's this two-player cab doing? Some people in the chat said, hey, that looks like the Midway cabinet. So maybe, I don't know why they'd be super coy about revealing the Midway cabinet. I mean, it's already kind of been leaked on retailer sites, but I also don't think it'd be an NFL Blitz cabinet, so I really don't know what it was. I guess the Midway cabinet, the Mortal Kombat Legacy I'm talking about, probably is the most likely choice, but I didn't really feel like I knew what that was about. John did talk about NFL Blitz a lot, and he did say the biggest issue, and I know a lot of you guys, you viewers, have already guessed this, is actually convincing the NFL it's not overly violent. Super ironic. You know, I'm not a football guy, but I know the injuries are pretty bad. Some of the stuff I've read about the lifespan of the players worse than like MMA and boxing, as violent as you think those sports are. NFL being worse, so pretty rich to me that NFL's super worried about some animated cartoon violence, but whatever. They've got an image they want to uphold. They're a huge organization, and image comes first over a little bit of licensing royalty, no question about that. But John had Mark Turmel on, who was the lead design, or I think he was the design lead. He was basically the guy behind the team that did NFL Blitz, also NBA Jam, also Smash TV, and some other games. And they did talk about Smash TV. But Mark talked about the whole history of when they originally made the game, that they had to go and retroactively take out a bunch of the more crazy video gamey animations because it's too violent. So they stripped all that out, and then that's the version, you know, we all played, was the stripped out version. Even that's the one being talked about as too violent. I never knew that history. I didn't know it was already toned down. I only knew that today's NFL thought it was too violent. I didn't know that 90s NFL thought it was too violent. So I don't know, whatever. The whole history is weird, but it really does sound like NFL Blitz is not ready to be announced. But Mark Turmel did have the NFL Blitz jersey on when he was on camera, and he would be a big stakeholder in that decision. I think really the problem is NFL, and my guess is Arcade1up is hoping to put some pressure on them, or at least just show them that there is support from the community for this. Simpsons was talked about too, and I really did think we would get a Simpsons announcement here. We did not, unfortunately. John was pretty clear that they're just not there yet with all the different parties who would have to sign off on a Simpson cab. But as he pointed out, Disney owns Fox now. Fox, of course, the studio behind Simpsons, and they've worked with Konami before, so it seems like something that would just come together organically. I'll be shocked if we don't see Simpsons this year, but, you know, apparently it's still being worked on. But we know how this stuff goes. A lot of these relationships are being developed, and signatures are being sought up until a couple weeks before they even unveil a cabinet. So I guarantee you they have prototypes ready to go. I wouldn't be surprised if they had real working proof of concept ready to go. But great looking game. I did pass up TMNT as a cartoonish beat 'em up. Simpsons is one I probably would buy. I really like the artwork too on the cabinet. It'd be a terrific piece really to any 90s arcade gamer. Attack from Mars was asked about. I'm so glad that this was brought up. So some people have been concerned that Attack from Mars is maybe limited in some way, that they're not going to make as many of them, and it'll be like Golden Axe where it's gone forever. That would be really sad, because I think that's the sleeper hit of all their pinballs. Yes, Star Wars and Marvel have their fans, but forget about it. Attack from Mars, I think, is the digital pinball product to have this year. Out of everything from every company, from what I've seen, it's all about Attack from Mars. And I know a lot of you want it. So he did say they're working on building more, and there was nothing clear about when it was coming. He did talk about rising shipping costs, and I think he mentioned something about rising materials costs. One of the commenters on this channel mentioned he's been hearing shipments out of China are getting a lot more expensive, specifically because the containers they're shipped in are becoming more expensive. I haven't looked into this. I don't know if it's true or not, but John clearly said, look, shipping costs are going up, costs overall are going up. This is getting tough to manage. So that might be why we're not getting Attack from Mars. That might be why we're not getting a lot of product. But Attack from Mars is not limited. They're going to continue to work to build more of them through the year. And while there were no announcements here in this show, there will be announcements coming this Thursday. So I think that's the 11th of February. And I don't know what he's talking about here. He said it won't be a cabinet or a product. It'll be bigger than that. And he said, what's bigger than that? And he being John D. Well, it's relationships. So they're going to announce a new partnership, a new collaboration. It wasn't completely clear, but somebody in the chat on the 1UP Weekly show pointed out, hey, there's a Code Mystics event on that same date. Now, I went online and checked out Code Mystics Twitter and their website. I didn't see any mention of anything on the 11th. So I can't confirm that. But, I wouldn't be surprised if Arcade1up buying Code Mystics, something like that. I don't know. But they're making a big move. They seem to think the community would care about it. I guess if I did have to bet, my bet would be they're buying Code Mystics. But that's a shot in the dark. It could be a million different things. Maybe they just signed a whole new game publisher that they've never worked with before. And then that gets me to my last point. So they mentioned, hey, at the end, you might want to go back and rewatch our video because you might be looking for different things. Well, clearly what you'd be looking for is they change their shirts every so often. It was kind of this running gag. And it was funny, but when you looked, the lighting wasn't that good. You couldn't quite tell always what the shirts were. But I did notice Cyrus had a Nintendo shirt on at one point, and he had a Top Gun shirt on at one point, which I'm hoping was a nod to Afterburner, and that we get an Afterburner cabinet. That would be super sweet, and I think that would sell a ton of units. And there were other shirts too, but I just couldn't always tell what it was. The Nintendo shirt, I've got to think, is just hopeful. But, they've got an announcement coming up in a few days. What if they announce we're working with Nintendo? I don't know why, but murmurings in the community about Arcade1up and Nintendo have been going up. And I'm happy to be wrong on this and eat some crow, but I'll tell you guys right now, I'm on the record, I do not think Nintendo will work with Arcade1up. And it's nothing against Arcade1up. I just don't think Nintendo's going to work with anyone. I've said this a ton of times, but remember back to the mini classic consoles. They actually started, the modern iteration of this started with Sega and Act Games. Well, Nintendo never worked with Act Games. Nintendo took a look at that market and said, we'll build our own. We're not going to surrender our brand equity of some of our finest games and our finest history as a company to a third party like Act Games. And they didn't. They made their own, and the rest was history. They really cultivated the mini console craze because they built it themselves. I think if they were going to do an arcade, they would do it. I don't think they care about the kind of money they would make in terms of licensing royalty from Arcade1up, getting their 5 or 10% or whatever it is. I just don't think it's meaningful to them. I don't even think the mini console revenue, as big as that was, is meaningful to them anymore. They did that because they were in between consoles. Nobody bought Wii U. They couldn't announce Switch yet, and they needed something to sell. They don't need anything to sell. They got Switch. They're working on the next iteration of Switch, as I understand. And, they're killing it. So as much as I'd love to see Arcade1up get Nintendo, and I'd love to see Nintendo do their own arcades, I don't think we're going to see either of those things anytime soon, at least until the Switch well runs dry. So I don't think it's possible. But again, hey, if it's wrong, I'll be the first person to say I was wrong. Just putting it out there on the record. So feel free to watch the video yourself. See if, I missed anything else. John did mention, and he was kind of pitching this to Mark Turmel, who worked on Smash TV. He said, hey, what if we did a cabinet with Berserk, Smash TV, Robotron 2084, and Total Carnage? Well, Berserk is a Stern game, the same Stern that does pinball. I thought it was weird he threw out a Stern title. It might have just been a shot in the dark, and I'm not familiar with Berserk, but I'm assuming it's a double joystick game. So maybe it was a shot in the dark, or maybe they have a relationship with Stern. Maybe that's being talked about. Maybe that's what the announcement will be this week. Maybe it's not Nintendo, but Stern would be a huge announcement in its own right. They could start doing Stern pinball. That would be amazing. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. I want to hear what you think below about what the announcement will be next week. And yeah, I wish I had more concrete news to share with you, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Hey, consider hitting that join button to support the channel, and thanks so much for watching.